Hello, Benicia residents. My name is Mario Giuliani, and I'm the Deputy City Manager with the City of Benicia. Over the past few weeks, I've had the opportunity to go to various organizations and give them some information on Measure R. And it was asked if we had this presentation on our website, and we hadn't. And so we thought we'd use technology, put it on a Zoom meeting, and allow you, the residents, to access the information that we've shared with the organizations. So I'm going to do my very best to have this as brief as possible, but it's going to be about a 15-minute presentation. So please bear with me. If you have to watch it in multiple parts, that's fine. We just feel it's important that you have this information so you can make an informed decision this November. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and pull up our presentation. Let me do that now. All right, here we go. Measure R is the Benicia Local Road Repair and Infrastructure Measure. Let's go right into the ballot question itself. This is what you're going to see on your ballot. And I want to draw your attention to the name, the Benicia Local Road Repair and Infrastructure Measure. Remember that, because we're going to distinguish this measure with another measure the city passed in 2014. A couple of things to highlight. One, in that first paragraph, this is for general government purposes. We'll talk about that in a moment and what that means. But I want to draw your attention to the items listed in this ballot question: fixing potholes, repairing and paving and maintaining our streets, protecting local creeks. That is the impetus for which this measure is designed, right? These are the key priorities that the City Council has noted for you, the voter. Functionally, this is a 3-4 cent sales tax increase. What does that mean? Well, you spend $100, it's going to cost you 75 cents more. It's anticipated to generate $5 million, and we're going to have citizens oversight, which is our economic development board, for which our city treasurer is a member of that body. Their task is to remind the city council of exactly what's in this ballot measure and also share the information on the monies that were derived in that given year and then how those dollars were spent. Okay, so what does this do with our current sales tax, which is at 8.375? If Measure R were to pass, it would go to 9.125. Important to note, if this passes, it will not go into effect until April 1st, 2023. So we have some time, even if R passes, until this takes effect. You can see from this chart how this will compare Benicia with our other neighboring communities. Of course, as we cross the bridge going to Contra Costa, we see those tax rates are already higher. They already have a transportation tax, including a tax for BART. And so even with Measure R, we would still be less than our neighbors in Contra Costa. In Solano County, we would of course be higher, although not as high as Vallejo if they pass their sales tax measure that's on the ballot this November. Why are we considering a new tax at all? Well, you may have seen in recent months, we have tried to share information to you, the residents, about the condition of our roads. It comes to no surprise to anyone that has driven in Benicia that our roads are deteriorating. What may come just as a surprise for you is that when you go to a gas station and you fill up your tank and you're paying that tax the state of California is collecting, you may think we get a lot of that monies back, those monies back. Well, we get 1.1 million, which is a lot of money. But we need $6 million a year in order to fix our roads on an ongoing basis. So that's a big funding gap. We know that the majority of our roads are in at-risk to fair condition, and that 42% of them are actually in the poor to very poor. And the only way to improve that is to invest $6 million on an annual basis. And we have about a 4.7 million funding gap from what the state of California gives us. This slide shares similar information. We know that worse roads, deteriorating roads, are far more expensive to maintain than good roads. So once we get roads to a higher quality, to a 70, that's what that looks like. It's far less expensive for us to maintain them than those roads that are in a PCI score, which means pavement condition index, in the 20s or 40s. That's the goal. How's Benicia been over the last 20 years? Well, in the early part of this century, we were doing quite well. We had some of the best roads in the county, but over time it has deteriorated. And we haven't received the funds necessary from the state of California in order to maintain our roads. And in so doing, they have deteriorated and worsened. Now you'll notice something that happened in about 2017. We had a large investment of city funds to improve our roads, the largest we've ever made. And yet, even still, our roads have actually kind of deteriorated and we have plateaued. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. You may ask yourself, wait a minute, don't we already have a sales tax measure? And you'll be recalling what the city put for your consideration in 2014, and that is Measure C. So let's talk about Measure C. Here's a side-by-side comparison of Measure R and Measure C. This is the ballot question that was placed on the ballots in November. We've already talked about R, so let's look at C. Let's look at the title of C, the City of Benicia Quality of Life Measure. Recall that in 2014, when Benicia came out of the Great Recession, our economy was fundamentally changed. We were not generating the same revenue that we had back in the 2007, 2008, prior to the recession. And as such, we needed additional revenue to maintain city services. And that's what this ballot question highlights. It talks about a full service city. It talks about improving and maintaining police and fire patrols. It talks about park maintenance, business attraction, and yes, also roads. But the point here is that it's all encompassing. It was not meant entirely for roads. And everything the city has done and the messaging that we put out since 2014 has highlighted this. This is the resolution the city council passed to put this matter on the ballot. What's highlighted? To maintain existing city services and also invest in projects like public safety, parks, and roads. Right? Again, highlighting the fact that the goal of Measure C was to support the services the city was already providing. We sent out 3 informational mailers for Measure C, much like you're getting for Measure R. And in all those measures, we said the same thing. Here are the priorities that Measure C would address. Here is the purpose of Measure C. It's needed to maintain Benicia's financial viability as a full-service city and protect our small-town quality of life. Measure C has always been about protecting city services. On October 24th of 2014, the City Council published a letter in the Benicia Herald highlighting this very point. And I draw your attention to that last paragraph and highlighted this sentence. This new revenue would be part of the solution to sustain city services that they provide the community. Again, a whole cadre of services that Measure C was supporting, not just roads. So how has the city kept the promise of Measure C? Well, to date, here is the spending chart. On the left, that purple, that's city services. Those are the city staff people that are providing you the services that you have come to expect and enjoy. And on the right, you see the investment that has been made in public safety projects, park and facilities. And 33%, nearly $15 million has been invested in our roads and infrastructure. And even with that investment, we still have not been able to improve a great degree in our pavement condition index, thus the need for additional revenue. Now, some may ask, well, wait a minute. Okay, let's say Measure C wasn't entirely for roads, but why don't we invest all of it into roads? Now we don't need Measure R. All right. Ask yourself this. If the city were to do that, would we then be keeping the promise of Measure C? Would we be investing in city services? Would we be investing in maintaining our police and fire response times? It's a question for you to answer. Let's look at how we have invested Measure C to date. Here is a list of every single project the city has committed funds to from Measure C, from public safety projects to parks to facilities and to roads and infrastructure. The largest piece of the capital project budget has been invested into roads. This is what services look like. When you see that 48% of that purple pie, this is what that looks like. It's police officers on our street. It's firefighters getting vaccines during the pandemic. It's having recreation programs in our community center and having parks workers prep a field for opening day and baseball. And having the peace of mind as residents knowing that we're going to have a fire department that's going to be able to respond to your needs in minutes. That is what Measure C is paying for on a day-to-day basis. I mentioned earlier about a general tax. So let's talk about a general tax and a specific tax. California is a unique place. As a municipality, we can put forward to you, the voters, kind of 2 questions. A general purpose tax, which Measure C is, it's also what Measure R is. A general purpose tax only needs 50% plus one in order to pass. A specific tax has a higher voter threshold. You need 66.66%, 2/3. In a specific tax, you have a noted item and it can only be used for that specific purpose. Very odd in California, you would think it would be reversed, but not the case. Okay, so we consulted with some professionals to help the city kind of test the viability of such a tax. And so we contracted with FM3 Research and Props and Measures to help us ascertain your willingness as voters to entertain such a tax. And so in the spring, from March 30th to April 12th, we conducted a statistically accurate survey to test the viability of a tax. And initially, the result was the vast majority of the residents of Benicia were supportive of putting a tax on the ballot and that they would support it. And you see here, it looks like we have 67, which is that magic number. But when you further kind of delineate those questions, you realize that it's a soft 67, that in reality, the consistent yes is only about 57%, which means we would fall short of the 2/3 needed to go for a specific tax. And so as staff, we were left with this dilemma of what to do. How do we proceed with securing the needed local revenue to address a major priority for the city council and this community? And so this is the dilemma and questions that we as staff put forward to our city council. It's important for you to look at these questions and kind of come to your own conclusions. As a city, we can only put revenue measures on every 2 years during council elections. So we have a variety of options. We could decide, all right, we'll go ahead with a specific tax in 2022, even though we know it's likely to fail. What do you think is going to happen in 2024? Do you think the city is likely to put a specific tax on the ballot again, knowing that it had failed in 22? Or do you think we would then try a general purpose tax in 2024? You have to also know that by waiting, it would cost millions of dollars more for us to address our road work. Oftentimes in government, we complain that all we do is kick the can down the road and it costs you, the voters, more money. Well, based on that kind of criteria, based on that information that we had data in a survey that a specific tax would fail in 2022, the city council decided we're going to go ahead and put a general purpose tax and do all we can to inform you, the voter, on what that primary purpose is. And then it is incumbent upon all of us as city staff, as residents, as council, as the oversight, to remind future councils what it is that this measure was intended for. What is the primary purpose behind Measure R? And so we could wait, but would it make sense to proceed with an action that you know will fail and will cost millions more to do nothing? Those are questions you can answer yourself. Can we just use existing funds to pay for roads? Congratulations, you have all been elected as members of the city council, and your first task is to cut 11% out of this budget to find $5 million on an annual basis in order to fund the necessary budget to fix our roads. Incredibly hard task. And oh, by the way, that's not all you have to do. You have to address the unfunded liabilities over the next 10 to 15 years on city needs. On the left, you see $200 million in our water and wastewater fund. Now that's enterprise. We all get our water and wastewater bills. That's a separate fund from the general fund. We're a 150-year-old city. We're older than that. We have a lot of infrastructure needs that have to be addressed on that side. In addition, we have $60 million to address with roads, $75 million on city facilities, $30 million on other city properties, and over $50 million to make improvements to our park facilities. There's a lot of need within this community. And it was city staff that brought forward to the city council, and the city council agreed that we need to find ways to have additional revenue in order to address these needs. There's, of course, a question on how this will impact our economy. And certainly we are aware that we are facing challenges in our economy with high inflation, that we are in a recession. Nevertheless, it's important that we secure the revenue to meet the needs of today. And I'll remind you, this tax, if passed, excuse me, will not go into effect until April 1st of 2023. And we do have some history as what happens when a tax is passed and what does it do to the economy. So let's look what happened when Measure C went into effect in 2015. This graph is very telling because you can see on the left from 2007 to 2008, our industrial park, the Benicia Industrial Park, that's what BIP stands for. This is the annual sales tax revenue the city received. This is the biggest piece of sales tax the city gets in order to provide services. And at that time, it was over $4 million a year. Well, what happened in 2008 and 9, the Great Recession? And you can see what it did. We are now in 2022, and we still yet to hit the mark that we had back in 2007. That is why we needed Measure C in the first place. So when we talk about our economy fundamentally changing, that's what that means. Okay, so then in 2015, Measure C goes on the books. And you can see that even when that 1 cent sales tax passed, it didn't cripple our economy. We were able to continue to grow as the economy grew. All right. Hopefully that provides some basis of information for you in order to make a decision. But if you need more information or you have further questions, please feel free at any time to reach out to me and call. I got an email yesterday and I wanted to share. And in the content of that email, it was asked, well, hey, this is great, but when do I know my road's going to get done? Our public works team has a very kind of standard in which they use to determine what roads and when roads are maintained. And at the simplest terms, it's basically taking the budget allocation and applying it in the most effective and efficient manner possible. But what I can tell you is if the city secures $5 million on an annual basis, we will have sufficient revenue in a 10 to 12 year time period to address every single road in Benicia. Again, more information, please reach out, give me a call, or shoot me an email. Thank you so much for taking the time to view this video.